Captain James Chen stood at attention in the grand hall of the Earth Silaxian embassy, trying not to stare at the alien delegates. Their crystalline skin caught the light, sending rainbow patterns across the marble walls. As head of embassy security, he had to stay focused, but the sight was still incredible. The royal princess approaches, announced a Xylaxian guard, his crystal-like face showing no emotion. Princess Lyria entered the hall, and James forgot his training for a moment. Unlike the blue-tinted skin of other Xylaxians, her crystalline surface had a pearl-like shimmer. Her eyes were like opals, changing color with each movement. "Remember," his commander whispered, "no direct eye contact. They consider humans too primitive for that." James nodded, focusing on his duty. This ceremony would mark the first year of Earth-Silaxian relations. Nothing could go wrong. That's when he noticed something odd. A servant near the princess was moving strangely, his hands hidden in his robes. James's combat instincts screamed danger. The servant suddenly pulled out a weapon, a sonic disruptor that could shatter crystalline beings. James didn't think. He moved. "Get down," he shouted, launching himself toward the princess. Time seemed to slow as his military training took over. The assassin fired. James tackled Lyria, shielding her with his body. The sonic blast hit a wall, creating a spiderweb of cracks. Rolling to his feet, James drew his stunner in one smooth motion. The assassin didn't expect a human to move so fast. One shot, and the attacker fell. The hall erupted in chaos. Silaxian guards rushed forward, their crystal armor clicking. But it was too late. The threat was already over. James helped Princess Lyria up, remembering too late about the no-touching rule. But instead of showing disgust, she stared at him with wonder. You risked yourself for me," she said, her voice like chimes in the wind, "even though I'm not human." "It's my duty, Your Highness," James replied, trying to step back. But she held his arm. "No," she said, "your duty was to protect human delegates. I saw your orders in your mind." Her opal eyes studied him. "You chose to save me." The Silaxian guards looked uncomfortable. Their species' telepathic abilities weren't supposed to be used so openly, especially not with lesser beings. "Princess," a royal advisor stepped forward. "We should move to a secure location." But Lyria didn't move. "What is your name, soldier?" "Captain James Chen, Your Highness." "Captain Chen." She said his name carefully, like she was tasting it. "I wish to thank you properly. Tomorrow, in the embassy gardens." The advisor gasped. "Princess, the protocols." "Almost dying makes one reconsider protocols," Lyria said firmly. She gave James one last look, her crystalline skin shimmering with new colors he'd never seen before. As she left, James realized his life had just become a lot more complicated. But watching her walk away, he couldn't bring himself to regret it. The embassy gardens were quiet in the early morning light. James stood nervously by the fountain, checking his uniform for the 10th time. He still couldn't believe the princess had asked to meet him. "You seem anxious, Captain Chen." Lyria's voice came from behind him. James turned and immediately bowed. She wore simpler robes today, but her crystalline skin still shimmered like moonlight on water. "Please, don't bow," she said. "I've seen enough bowing to last several lifetimes." She walked closer, her movements graceful. "I wanted to thank you properly for yesterday." "Just doing my job, Your Highness." "Lyria," she corrected him. "And no, you weren't. I'm a telepath, remember? I know the difference between duty and—" She paused, touching her own chest, where her crystalline skin pulsed with soft light. "Whatever made you act yesterday?" James shifted uncomfortably. "We're taught to protect life, regardless of species." "Fascinating." She circled him slowly. "Your mind is different from any I've encountered. Most humans think in straight lines, but yours—" Her opal eyes widened. "Yours moves like water, flowing in unexpected directions. A palace guard appeared at the garden entrance, looking concerned. Lyria waved him away. "Would you show me something human?" she asked suddenly. "I'm sorry." She pulled out a small device. "Music. I've studied your species' music, but never heard it chosen by an actual human. Would you pick something?" James thought for a moment, then selected an old jazz piece on her device. The smooth sounds of saxophone filled the garden. Lyria's crystalline skin began to pulse with the rhythm, creating patterns of light. "Extraordinary. We have nothing like this. Our music is all mathematical patterns, but this..." She closed her eyes, swaying slightly. "This feels like emotions given sound." "That's a good way to describe jazz." James smiled, forgetting protocol for a moment. "You're doing it again," she said, opening her eyes. "Your mind. It's creating colors I've never seen before." She stepped closer. "What is that feeling?" James knew he should step back. There were rules about this, but something in her curious expression held him still. "Probably happiness," he said softly. "Or maybe something more." A sharp voice cut through the moment. Princess Lyria. An older Xylaxian noble stood at the garden entrance, his crystalline face rigid with disapproval. "Your father requests your presence." Immediately. Lyria straightened, her royal bearing returning. But as she turned to leave, she whispered to James, "Tomorrow. Same time. Show me more human music." Before he could answer, she was gone, leaving only the lingering scent of crystal flowers and the memory of her fascinated expression. The noble gave James a cold look before following her. The message was clear: stay away from the princess. But watching the morning light play through the fountain water, James knew it was already too late for that. The embassy gardens became their secret world. Each morning, before the sun rose, James and Lyria would meet by the fountain. Today, he was teaching her about earth dances, so humans move their bodies to express feelings. Lyria asked, watching a dance video on James' tablet. Her crystalline skin sparkled with curiosity. "Yeah, sometimes words aren't enough to show what's in your heart," James explained. "Heart." Lyria touched her chest. "We Xylaxians focus on the mind, but humans always talk about the heart." "Show me." James hesitated, then held out his hand. "May I?" She placed her crystalline hand in his. Despite looking like glass, her skin felt warm. James guided her into a simple, slow dance position. "This is called a waltz," he said softly, showing her the basic steps. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. As they moved together, Lyria's skin began to glow with new colors, soft pinks and golds that seemed to pulse with the rhythm of their steps. "Your emotions," she whispered, "they're so strong. We're taught that humans are primitive because you feel too much." But she looked up at him. "I've never experienced anything so beautiful." They had stopped dancing, but neither let go. James knew he should step back. The rules about human Xylaxian contact were clear, but Lyria's opal eyes held him in place. "James," she said his first name for the first time. "I want to try something. May I?" She reached up slowly, touching her fingertips to his temple. Suddenly, his mind filled with colors and sensations, her thoughts, her feelings, flowing into him like a gentle stream. "This is how my people share deep emotions," she explained. In that mental touch, James felt everything: her fascination with humans, her growing feelings for him, and underneath it all, a loneliness he'd never expected a princess to feel. Without thinking, he leaned down and kissed her. The mental connection exploded with light. Lyria's crystalline skin blazed like a rainbow, filling the garden with colors no one had ever seen before. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathless. "That was..." Lyria touched her lips in wonder. "I'm so sorry." James started to apologize, but she stopped him. "Don't be. That was the most incredible thing I've ever..." She stopped suddenly, her skin paling. "Someone's coming." They quickly stepped apart as a palace guard rounded the corner. The guard's crystalline face showed shock at the princess's still glowing skin. "Your Highness," he bowed stiffly, "your father, the Emperor, requests your presence." Immediately, Lyria composed herself, but her skin still shimmered with new colors. "Of course, I'll come right away." As she left, she sent one last thought to James. Meet me tonight. After sunset, same place asterisk. James watched her go, knowing they had just crossed a line they could never uncross. But the memory of those shared feelings, that perfect moment, made any consequence seem worth it. Emperor Vaxthor's crystalline form towered over his daughter in the palace throne room. His skin pulsed with angry red patterns that filled the chamber with harsh light. "What have you done?" he demanded. "The entire palace talks of nothing but your interactions with that human soldier." Lyria stood straight, her own skin glowing with defiant colors. "His name is James, father, and he's more than just a soldier. He is beneath you." The Emperor's voice cracked like thunder. "You are the crown princess of the Thylaxian Empire. Your every action affects our people." "Perhaps our people need to change," Lyria argued. "The humans aren't primitive. They feel things we've forgotten how to feel." The Emperor waved his hand, and a hologram appeared. It showed James and Lyria in the garden, dancing, kissing. The colors that had bloomed across her skin in that moment were clear evidence of their connection. "This ends now," the Emperor said coldly. "I've arranged your marriage to Prince Zixtal of the Crystal Nebula. He arrives tomorrow." "What?" Lyria's skin went pale. "Father, you can't." "I can, and I must. The alliance with his system is crucial." The Emperor's face softened slightly. "Daughter, I know you think you feel something for this human. But it's just curiosity. It will pass." "It's not curiosity." Lyria's skin blazed with emotion. "I love him." The word echoed through the throne room. Several court officials gasped. Love was considered a primitive emotion among their people. "You see," the Emperor gestured to the shocked faces. "You're already thinking like them, using their emotional words." "Maybe that's not a bad thing," Lyria said quietly. "When I'm with James, I feel more, not less. My telepathy is stronger, clearer. He doesn't weaken me. He makes me stronger." "Enough." The Emperor's skin flashed dangerous patterns. "Captain Chen will be transferred back to Earth immediately. If you attempt to contact him, he will face charges of inappropriate influence on royal family members. You can't do this." "I can, and I will." The Emperor touched a crystal panel, and guards entered. "Escort the princess to her chambers. She is not to leave until Prince Zixtal arrives." As the guards approached, Lyria sent out a desperate telepathic message, hoping James would somehow feel it. "I won't give up on us." In the human section of the embassy, James was being informed of his immediate transfer. As he packed his bags, he felt a strange warmth in his mind, like crystal light touching his thoughts. He didn't need to be telepathic to know it was Lyria. Looking out his window toward the palace, he made a silent promise. This wasn't over. Above them, the alien sun set on what seemed like the end of their dream. But sometimes, endings are just the beginning of a different kind of story. The military tribunal room was cold and stark. James stood at attention, facing 3 human judges and 2 Thylaxian officials. Through the window, he could see Earth's embassy staff watching nervously. Captain James Chen, the lead judge, read from a tablet. "You are charged with inappropriately influencing a member of the Thylaxian royal family. How do you plead?" Before James could answer, the doors burst open. Princess Lyria strode in, her crystalline skin blazing with determined light. Guards rushed after her. "Your Highness, you cannot be here," a Thylaxian official protested. "Actually, I must be here." Lyria's voice rang clear. "Because you're all wrong about what happened between us." The judges whispered among themselves. No Thylaxian royal had ever appeared at a human tribunal before. "Princess," The lead judge said carefully, "This is highly irregular." "So is this." Lyria walked to James and took his hand. Immediately, her skin began to glow with those unique colors only he could bring out. But this time, something new happened. James felt warmth spread up his arm. To everyone's amazement, his skin began to shimmer faintly, like moonlight on water. Gasps filled the room. A Xylaxian official dropped his crystal tablet. "Impossible," he whispered. "Humans cannot share our light patterns." "That's what we all thought," Lyria said. "But we were wrong about so many things." She faced the tribunal. "James didn't weaken or corrupt me. His humanity, his capacity for emotion, has made my telepathic abilities stronger than ever." To prove her point, she sent a gentle telepathic wave through the room. Everyone, human and Xylaxian alike, felt a moment of pure joy and connection. "This is what humans can teach us," she continued. "Not weakness, but a different kind of strength. The strength to feel deeply, to connect truly." James squeezed her hand. "Your honors, I know I broke protocols. But sometimes rules need to change for the better." The lead judge looked thoughtful. "The evidence of some unique connection is clear. However, the Emperor's orders are based on fear and old prejudices." Lyria finished. "Look at us. Really look." Together, they stood before the tribunal, human and Xylaxian, their joined hands creating patterns of light never seen before. It was beautiful and impossible and real. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the building. A guard rushed in. "Your Highness, Prince Sixtol's ship has arrived early. Your father demands your immediate return." Lyria's grip on James's hand tightened. "I won't go." "Princess," the lead judge said gently, "perhaps we should recess until—" "No," James interrupted, an idea forming. "Something's wrong. A diplomatic ship wouldn't trigger our security alarms." Lyria's eyes widened as she read his thoughts. "You think?" "We need to check those ships," James said firmly. "Now." The tribunal room erupted in chaos, but James and Lyria remained connected, their shared light growing stronger as a new threat approached. Prince Sixtol's arrival brought a fleet of shimmering crystal ships that hung over the embassy like frozen stars. James watched from the security room, studying sensor readings that didn't make sense. "Those aren't normal diplomatic vessels," he told his commander. "They're carrying heavy weapons." A commotion outside drew their attention. Prince Sixtol was making his entrance, his crystalline form larger and more angular than other Xylaxians. Lyria stood beside her father, her skin dulled with unhappiness. "My beautiful bride." Sixtol's voice boomed. But James noticed his eyes were cold, like sharp ice. Using his security clearance, James slipped into the palace's data network. What he found made his blood run cold. "Captain Chen," a voice said behind him. "Still causing trouble." James turned to find Sixtol's security chief, his crystal armor gleaming menacingly. "Just doing my job," James replied calmly, secretly sending the data to his personal device. "Checking security protocols." "Of course." The chief smiled coldly. "Though soon, human security won't be needed here anymore." James waited until the chief left before racing to find Lyria. He found her alone in a palace garden, her skin showing patterns of sadness. "Lyria," he whispered urgently, "I found something. This marriage, it's part of something bigger." She quickly created a telepathic shield around them. "Show me." James shared what he'd discovered. Sixtol belonged to a secret group called the Crystal Purity Movement. They planned to use the marriage alliance to force all humans out of Xylaxian space. They believe any contact with humans pollutes Xylaxian culture, James explained. "The wedding is just the first step." Lyria's skin paled. "The fleet above us isn't for protection. It's for invasion." A crystal vase nearby suddenly shattered. They turned to find Sixtol watching them, his skin pulsing with angry red light. "How disappointing," the prince said. "We tried to do this peacefully." He touched a crystal on his wrist. Alarms began blaring throughout the palace. "What have you done?" Lyria demanded. "Activated our primary plan early. By sundown, there will be no human presence in Scilaxian space." He smiled cruelly. "Starting with your precious Captain Chen." Guards surrounded them, but these weren't normal palace guards. Their crystal armor bore the secret marks of Zixtal's movement. "Take the human for processing," Zixtal ordered, "and escort my bride to her chambers. She needs time to adjust her thinking." As guards moved to separate them, Lyria grabbed James's hand. Their shared light flared brilliantly, momentarily blinding everyone. "Run," James shouted, pulling her toward a side door. Behind them, Zixtal's enraged roar echoed through the palace. "Find them. The ceremony must happen today, or everything falls apart." Racing through crystal corridors, James and Lyria knew they had to stop this somehow. The fate of two species now depended on a forbidden love that refused to die. James and Lyria raced through the crystal corridors of the palace, alarms blaring around them. Their joined hands glowed with shared light, casting strange shadows on the walls. "The throne room," Lyria said breathlessly. "We have to warn my father before Zixtal reaches him." "They'll expect that," James replied, pulling them into a hidden alcove as guards ran past. "Which is exactly why we should try it." "What do you mean?" "Sometimes being predictable is the best strategy." James checked his stunner. "They'll think we're too smart to do the obvious thing." Lyria's skin flickered with amusement despite their danger. That's such a human way of thinking. They heard Zixtal's voice echoing through the halls. "Find them. The human must not reach the Emperor." James looked at Lyria seriously. "I have a plan, but you won't like it." Through their connection, she sensed his thoughts. "No, I won't let you sacrifice yourself. Listen." He touched her crystalline cheek. "Zixtal's guards will stop anyone trying to reach your father, but they won't kill me immediately. They'll want to make an example of me. That's supposed to make me feel better. It'll give you time to reach the Emperor through the secret passages." He smiled. "I'm not planning to die. I'm planning to be a very noisy distraction." Before she could argue, James stepped into the main corridor. "Hey," he shouted at the guards. "Looking for something?" "The human." They raised their weapons. James ran, but not toward the throne room. Instead, he headed for the Grand Hall, making as much noise as possible. Dozens of guards chased him, leaving other paths clear. He reached the hall, finding himself surrounded by Zixtal's forces. The prince himself walked in, sneering. "Brave but foolish," Zixtal said. "Where is my bride?" "Safe from you," James replied. He had backed up against a crystal pillar, seemingly trapped. "You primitives never understand. Everything we do is to keep our species pure. Strong." James laughed. "Strong? You're terrified of change, of feelings. That's not strength. That's cowardice." Zixtal's skin flashed with rage. "Kill him." But James had been counting seconds in his head. Right as the guards raised their weapons, he dropped and rolled. The huge crystal chandelier above them crashed down, exactly as he planned when he shot its support earlier. Chaos erupted. Guards scattered, some trapped under crystal shards. James used the confusion to fight his way through, his military training giving him an advantage over their rigid combat patterns. "Stop him," Zixtal roared. James took a hit to his shoulder, but kept moving. Through his connection with Lyria, he felt her getting closer to the throne room. His plan was working. "You want to know real strength?" he shouted at Zixtal. "It's not about being pure. It's about being brave enough to change." He stood in the center of the hall, weaponless now but unafraid. Through his bond with Lyria, he felt her reach her father. Now he just had to survive long enough for the truth to come out. "For her," he whispered, raising his fists as the guards closed in. "For us all." The throne room doors burst open as Lyria ran in, her skin blazing with urgent patterns. The emperor rose from his crystal throne, startled by his daughter's entrance. "Father, stop this. Zixtal is planning to destroy everything." More human-inspired dramatics. The emperor began, but stopped when he saw the terror in his daughter's eyes. Through their mental link, Lyria felt James fighting in the grand hall. She had to hurry. "Look into my mind." "Father," she pleaded, "see the truth." The emperor hesitated, then touched his daughter's forehead. His eyes widened as Lyria shared everything. Zixtal's plans, the hidden fleet, and most importantly, her connection with James. This is impossible," he whispered, seeing how human emotions had made his daughter's powers stronger. Suddenly, Zixtal strode in, dragging a battered but defiant James. "Your Majesty, the human insurgent has been caught." "The only insurgent here is you," James said, blood trickling from his lip. Despite his injuries, he stood straight, a soldier to the end. Silence. Zixtal raised his weapon. "No." Lyria moved between them. As she touched James, their shared light filled the throne room. The emperor watched in amazement as his daughter's power merged with human strength, creating something entirely new. "You see, Father," Lyria said, "this is what they fear. Not that humans will weaken us, but that together we'll become something stronger than they can control." Lies. Zixtal's skin cracked with rage. "The crystal purity movement will save our species from contamination." But the emperor had seen enough. "Guards, arrest Prince Zixtal for treason." Too late. Zixtal pressed a crystal on his wrist. Above the palace, his fleet's weapons powered up. What happened next stunned everyone. James broke free, tackling Zixtal. As they fought, Lyria used their connection to boost her telepathic powers. She reached out to the fleet's crews, showing them the truth about their leader. The emperor added his own mental strength to his daughters. Together, they revealed Zixtal's lies to every Gazilaxian in range. "No," Zixtal screamed as his own guards turned against him. "You're destroying everything." "We're saving everything," Lyria corrected, helping James up. By choosing to grow instead of hiding in fear, the emperor walked slowly to where James and Lyria stood together, their shared light still glowing. He touched the light cautiously and gasped as he felt their connection. "I was wrong," he admitted. "This is not weakness. This is evolution." As royal guards led Zixtal away, James turned to Lyria. "You know, on Earth we have a saying, 'Love conquers all.'" "How very human," she smiled, her skin shimmering with joy. "And how very true." The emperor cleared his throat. Perhaps some laws need to change. For the good of both our peoples." Above them, Zixtal's fleet stood down as the truth spread. The light from James and Lyria's bond reflected off the crystal walls, painting the throne room in colors of hope and new beginnings. The great crystal cathedral of the Thylaxian capital glowed with 1,000 colors. Today marked a historic event, the first human Thylaxian royal wedding. James stood at the altar, his dress uniform gleaming. Since his connection with Lyria had awakened, his skin had developed a faint crystalline sheen that caught the light. The human guests whispered in amazement at how he seemed to shine. "Nervous?" his commander asked with a smile. "Terrified," James admitted. "Good thing Thylaxians can't read human humor and wedding vows." The music began, a blend of Earth classical and Thylaxian crystal songs. Everyone turned as Lyria entered. She was breathtaking. Her crystalline skin rippled with colors of love and joy, her royal robes flowing like liquid starlight. But what caught everyone's attention was how her light patterns synchronized perfectly with James's subtle glow as she approached. The emperor himself stood to perform the ceremony. His own skin showed patterns of pride and acceptance, so different from his attitude just months ago. "Today," he announced, "we don't just unite two people. We unite two species, two ways of seeing the universe." He smiled at the couple. "And thanks to my daughter and this brave human, we're all stronger for it." James and Lyria joined hands. Immediately, their shared light filled the cathedral, dancing across the crystal walls in patterns never seen before. In human tradition, James said his vows first. I promise to love, honor, and cherish you. In war and peace, in light and dark, in this world and any other. Lyria's skin brightened with joy. In Scilaxian tradition, I share my light with yours. She touched his forehead gently. And in human tradition, I give you my heart, forever. The emperor raised his hands. What love has joined, let no law, no tradition, and no fear ever separate. As they kissed, their combined light created a display so beautiful that both humans and Xylaxians gasped. Through their telepathic connection, everyone in the cathedral felt a moment of their joy. At the reception, humans danced with Xylaxians, teaching each other their ways. The crystal walls pulsed with happiness as two cultures became one. Look what you started, Lyria whispered to James as they danced. All because you weren't afraid to love someone different. All because you were brave enough to choose your own path, he corrected, spinning her gently. From his throne, the emperor watched the celebrations. His advisor leaned close. The first group of human Xylaxian couples has already applied for marriage licenses. Good, the emperor smiled. Let them love. Let them show us new colors we never dreamed possible. James held Lyria close as the Earth's sun set and Xylaxia's 3 moons rose. Their shared light painted the crystal city in colors of hope, love, and possibility. Ready for our next adventure? Lyria asked. James kissed her softly, their light patterns merging into one brilliant glow. With you, always. Above them, the stars seemed to shine brighter, as if celebrating a love that had bridged the gap between worlds and showed everyone that the strongest bonds aren't forged by tradition or law, but by hearts brave enough to love without limits.